MHO Talk Show.
No, just going to say another great guest.
That's right. Absolutely, another great guest. She said, she gave me the warning that she doesn't like to self promote, but but you're here now, so I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you, Auntie.
I'm ready.
So we are here with Auntie Jess, as she is known by so many. I mean, like, I'm not gonna ask your age. I may be older than you, probably am, but I'm still gonna call you Auntie if that's all right. Auntie
I appreciate that. Love. I appreciate it. It's family.
That's right. So I've been seeing your name in the community, had the pleasure of being able to cross paths with you and work on a couple of events together, like the Black Love Symposium and Soiree. Thank you for coming to that. And you are definitely, your reputation precedes you.
Ooh.
And so
we're gonna have church in here.
So I told Ms. Max, I was, Ms. Max said, I was like, let me send you this flyers. Jessica A. Harris, think we should have her on. She obliged. And, the beautiful thing, but the hardest part is that you're so multi-talented. Like, where do we start?
Yeah.
Like, where do we start?
I don't know.
but Jessica A. Harris, LLC, is the business astrophysicist, science communicator, consultant, and Auntie Jess. Right.
Yeah. I was reading the flyer saying, okay, you do everything.
all the things, just a little bit of everything.
Yes, indeed. But I guess for our listening audience, we are based here in Charlottesville, of course, but we stream worldwide. But for our listening audience that may not be familiar with you, your brand, your work, I guess give us just a little professional background, like what's your stump speech? Like what's your CV, your resume?
Okay, what's my elevator pitch?
Yeah, your elevator pitch for yourself.
That's what I always teach my students. Yeah. So my name is Jessica Harris. My students dearly call me Auntie Jess. Astrophysicist by training, but spent a good portion of my career, my 9 to 5, working at Space Telescope Science Institute. Actually came here to Charlottesville to work at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, then worked at UVA in the engineering school to support the Clark Scholars Program. So in all of that, I always had my hands in a lot of things, but one thing that really stuck with me was working with our college students in any of our summer internship programs. So when I was thinking about branching out and doing my own thing, especially, and I launched in July 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, and I was switching jobs to UVA. I thought a lot about what I wanted to do, and a big part of it was just the mentoring. And so when my students call me Auntie Jess, we just ran with it. So just really interested in science and began just wanting to share that passion with other people. And so when I was at Space Telescope, I talked about the James Webb Space Telescope for years. And I'm really excited that it launched. So that's like a little bit of my CV. That's like the professional side of it. But the personal side is I'm a military brat, lived a little bit of everywhere. And I have 2 little minions. Well, they're not so young anymore. They're 9 and 11. So yeah. That's a little bit about me.
Yeah, good stuff. How does it overlap? Because I hear you, right? But I feel like that there's a deeper passion to where like to where you're intentional about about having these different expertises, but but I can imagine that there's a way that you could probably break it down, on why these things combine and they work for you.
Yeah,
that's how the stars align.
Yeah.
That's such a good question. I'm still stuck on the my reputation precedes me, just because I had a lot of reasons, but I had just did my Auntie Jess's Corner Wednesday about your brand. And saying that you want your reputation behind closed doors to be better than the reputation outside. Like you want to have a good reputation. So it just hit me. So it's another one of those like God aligned moments. How does it all align? I have to go back just for a little bit and tell a story, because I'm a storyteller.
Okay. Yes,
so when I was younger, you asked me what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an educator. My aunties were educators. And then I got into high school. I really didn't like math. I really wasn't even good at math. And we went from Germany to Alaska. And for some reason, they put me in geometry. My freshman year. I didn't know what I was doing, but I worked really, really hard. And at that time, I didn't know it was called a growth mindset, meaning you can grow and learn into something. Because prior to that, y'all have that smart kid in the class that just knows everything, knows all the facts. I always thought like they just were born like that, or they just had that. And I learned in time, no, actually you can work on it. So I worked really, really hard in math. So went from not liking it, not really understanding it, to it became one of my greatest strengths. But I put in the work. I was in meeting my teacher before school, meeting her after school. And it was in my Algebra 2 class. We were doing this homework assignment. It just felt like repetitive. Why are we doing this? I'll still forget that teacher, Mary Moran. I was like, why are we doing this? What is the significance of this? She says, because it's building critical and analytical thinking skills. And I was like, oh, it makes you think about math completely different. It's not just about the formulas, not just about the equations, but it allows you to think differently. So still graduated high school in Alaska, went to Grambling State University in Louisiana, HBCU, let's go. And I declared my major to be secondary education with a concentration in math. And the short of that is basically I wanted to be a high school teacher to teach math because I saw, being a military brat, people were coming into our math classes at all different levels, some more advanced, some not advanced. And God bless the teachers that were English teachers, but had to do the math. You're just going to have a different level of passion for it. So really wanted to do that. My freshman year, I had a physics class for non-STEM majors, and I met an amazing mentor, Dr. Tang Zhu. He ended up passing like middle of my 4 years of college, but he pulled me underneath his wings. He gave me my first internship. It was actually at Duke University. And, you know, he was an amazing man. He's been 19 years since he passed, and I still talk about him. So I went from wanting to be a high school teacher, wanting to major in that, and then he convinced me I should major into physics, which I did. So I switched over to physics. And that sounds like, how did you do that? Well, I had a really strong math background. And so it wasn't easy because physics is hard, but that just began this journey that changed my life forever. And so being able to be on the STEM track, I was able to get scholarships because there are not a lot of us in our field. And so there's a lot of scholarships to support Black and brown students within our field. Then led to my last internship before I went into my master's program at Vanderbilt University. And Vanderbilt has a partnership with Fisk University.
Okay.
It's also another HBCU. So I'm a proud graduate of 2 HBCUs. Went there, decided to study. So at physics, at Fisk, they didn't have a astronomy degree, but my research was in astronomy. So I say all that to say that I had in mind to be an educator. I was just at an event this week when they were like, well, what did you want to be when you grow up? And are you still that thing you wanted to be? And I still kept my hand up because I'm still an educator. I still get to teach people. It's just not in a formal classroom. So the heart of it is just wanting to teach students. And then the bigger part of it, when I got exposed to astronomy, I was like, I want to teach us. Like, I want us to be exposed to this. And I love those moments that people have when you're talking about what James Webb can do, or you're sharing some new fact and they have that bing moment. Like, that's what I wanted to keep doing. And so literally, how did I get here? How did the stars align? Like, if I had to give pieces of advice, I would say, be open to your pathway. It's maybe not as straight as we want it to be. And so decided in our field, specifically in physics and astronomy, they tell us a lot to get our PhD, right? It's increasing the number of Black women, increasing the number of Black men to get it. But I was at the end of, kind of getting to the end of writing my thesis. And I was like, this struggle is real. I don't want to get a PhD and then I'm not using my degree because I'm so beat up. I'm so all the things. And then it's like a whole different hustle. If you want to stay in academia, you have to write all these grants. I was like, that's not my life. It was a huge turning point because, again, my whole career is like, you got to get a PhD, you got to get a PhD. But I took a leap of faith. So when I graduated in May, I had no job prospects other than an internship at Space Telescope. Went to Space Telescope, had an amazing summer experience. 2 weeks before the program ended, my future boss said, hey, we want you to come back for a month and work with us. I was like, okay. So took a month break, came back in around November, did the month with her. And then I got onto another project. So was on soft money for 9 months, applied for a position there. And I made it to like the final rounds. My boss would be my future boss. She brought me in and she was like, Jessica, you didn't get the position, but I want to tell you directly. I was bummed. I'm like, man, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I was kind of betting on this, but she was like, but there's something about a but. She said, but you did so good. We don't want to lose you. We're going to create a position for you.
Okay.
Look at God.
Yeah.
Won't he will? So they created a position for me, and the role was primarily focused on doing outreach with James Webb. So spent 7 years talking about James Webb Space Telescope.
Wow.
And so again, just following my passions, really, really wanting to reach to us. And throughout that process, so I came in as an intern over this summer program. And then before I left, I was the director of that program for 2 years. So like full circle moments, but just the journey wasn't clear. I didn't have a pathway. Like I said, 2 weeks before the program ended, like I'm talking with my parents, like, well, you can come back. You can be here with your baby sister. I was like, no, I'm sorry. I didn't get 2 degrees to come back home. And there's nothing wrong with going back home. I'm not shading nobody, just my life. But it was a lot of faith. And so just the passion for wanting to share science was over that. And then the experiences that I had in my research opportunities, I didn't want other students to feel that too. And so being able to be over in a program and really getting to guide it, really getting to say like, this is what we're going to do. I changed the program significantly because I just wanted it to be equitable to male and female. Because prior to that, it had been a lot of white males.
Right.
That's just how our field is. It's predominantly white male and then now more women. And so I'm thinking like, that's a good thing, right? Just making it equal. I'm not even talking about like ethnicity at this point. I'm just saying, let's make it as equal male, female, or a male identifying, female identifying. Right. So we put out the offers equally. And of course, people maybe turn things down, and it ended up being more females than males. The first time this program had been around for 26 years. Right. The first time that this program had ever been more female than male.
So it was just a matter of opportunity.
It was,
right?
but it was about being intentional. I was intentionally just wanting to make the playing field even. So you think this is a great thing? Like the Institute was about to put a press release together, and then somebody in one of those review board meetings or whatever it was like, well, if my son applied to this, and you can imagine his color of his skin, if he applied, he wouldn't get in. I don't see the problem. I don't really see the problem. But I had to defend how I ended up getting that. And so that leads into the equity part of this, the diversity, equity, inclusion part of this, because I want to make the field more of us, but not just more of us to be in another toxic environment, more of us to really shift it because our brilliance is needed. Absolutely. And so that's how that DEI came into play, always being the only Black woman in the room, experiencing the things that I'm experiencing and getting feedback like, well, you're bringing this up, but no one else brought this up to us. Well, you've never had another Black female or male in this role. So yeah, my white colleagues are not experiencing what I'm experiencing. And so that is like that heart and passion. So the educator in me wanting to support students, wanting to change the field. And I'm not going to lie to you. When I was here at NRAO, there was a period of time I was like, I want to just leave the field altogether. Like I'm tired of pushing the system. The system doesn't want to change. Like I just want to work at like a factory job. Just let me do something that's really repetitive. I only got to use a whole lot of thoughts. And prayed about it. And what kept coming back is like, what's the thing you're most passionate about? I was like, it's students. And so that's the thing I can directly impact. I can directly impact students right now. I can help them with their elevator pitches. I can help them with not just surviving in our field, but thriving in our field and giving them chess moves, right? Because you're in this, but you need to know what's not in the textbooks. You need to know how to play it. And so that's when I focused on that and stopped trying to change the whole system. I'm like, I can fix this one little piece of my system through mentoring. And so that's how the passions aligned.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you know, what's interesting, Max, is that, so Jessica, you, I don't know if you were listening in before you came on the air with us, but that same conversation was just happening. So, you know, so that synergy is crazy of how you have a passion for something, but sometimes the elements that are against you kind of, you know, wear you down. And you got to remember that, wait a minute though, like this is my calling, this is my passion. And it may be thankless sometimes, but I'm in a position and I have the wherewithal to be able to, you know, to be a change maker.
For sure. Like,
so that's just so important. I'm curious, do you mentor outside of your field? Because I can imagine someone, you know, with your repertoire would have people from everywhere, every study, right, would be like, oh, can you can I shadow you?
I appreciate that. Actually, I do. My godmom, Coach Robbie Cade, she has a coaching program, and we work with small business owners in her Coach Robbie program. So we're in a program right now for 6 months, and so that's kind of exposure outside of just my direct field. So yeah, I'm specifically niched down. You know, when you create a business, you want to have a specific niche to your audience, and so it's to Black, mainly undergraduate students, but also professionals in our field. But like I'm a certified coach in what I do. And so I love to be able to share that. One thing I didn't mention in my resume is that I'm also really passionate about mental health. And so we can't talk about us being in this field or just day to day, right? That's that universal care of ourselves. And so I became an adult mental health first aid instructor because I wanted to be able to go back to our communities and remove the stigma. We don't talk enough about our mental health. And, we were talking about God and how he does things. And I'm a firm believer in him and I love him. Right. I believe he brought therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists and all of the doctors that we have for a reason. So you need to do God and some therapy or God and some medicine. And so just wanting to trade, just again, breaking down the stigmas and wanting to change the system. And you mentioned about, being an influencer and wanting to make change and it being thankless. It is. And I say to people all the time, I want people to leave out of my presence and remember how I feel, because Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so I don't do this for any recognition. So I have a hard time talking about myself, but I know that what I'm doing is trailblazing. But if you had told me to do this and it to be trail, I would have never done it. I'm just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so when I launched my business, I became more and more convicted of that. Like, this is my lane. This is what I've been put on earth to do. And I'm going to be passionate about it. So if I get no accolades, that's fine. But I want to just change the system. And I'm not saying I don't want accolades, because I do have some. But I mean, that's important for your reputation, for people wanting to work with you. Like, all of that is great. But I want when I die that the field was somehow changed because of Auntie Jess being in it. So that was a long way of answering your question.
That's beautiful though. But that term, I don't know if you heard of it, Max, but never heard it mentioned as mental health first aid. And you're a mental health first aid instructor. So when you put mental health with first aid, is there something I'm missing there, or is that just mental health, or is that a particular initiative?
Yeah, it's a particular initiative with the National Council of Well-being, I believe. But it's a national program. The program initially started in Australia and then came over here to the States. And so think about being an adult mental health first aider, like you think about a first responder. If you call the police or you call the fire department, like they're the first responders of something happening. So this is when you're mental health first aider, we're able to recognize these changes with mental health challenges or substance use challenges with the people we're most familiar with, right? And so if you guys are partnering with each other, and Max, you come in one day, you're just different, right? You're maybe a little bit more hopeless, like the way you're like, you just have shifted. Charles is going to be able to notice it, right? And so just bringing awareness. So that's what it is. Like, we're mental health first aiders to support our communities, support our families. So if people are struggling, we're not clinicians. But I have enough resources to get you to someone that needs help, and being able to recognize, like, hey, like, this is happening. I'll never forget being at a conference. It was here, the National Society of Black Physicists. They had their first conference after COVID here in Charlottesville, which was amazing. And there was a student in crisis. And I'm grateful that I had that training, because she's in the bathroom, and like everything I was trying to do to get her to calm down, she wasn't, which was like, okay, all right, she's not in just an early stage. She's in a little bit more of a crisis situation, and just being able to listen to her, being able to hear what she was saying and say, like, we need to get her some supports. And so that's what it is. So it is a national program, and I do offer courses. I try to do it twice a month. And then next month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I'll be doing some new things for that.
I actually read that too, but in my mind, I try to make them separate things because I had never heard of it before.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, Mental Health Awareness Month. We're gonna have some great guests on for that too, Max. Yeah, we got to. And of course, you're welcome in any time as well. Just let us know.
Please.
But we are joined by Jessica A. Harris. She is an educator amongst many things. And so when it comes to your mission of inspiring and empowering, like I can imagine that you have to get pretty vocal when it comes to like things DEI, related. I guess, how do you consult people nowadays when we see the attack on DEI, and when we have elected representatives who don't, they don't feel like that any of that's necessary. And of course, we know why there's a power structure that wants to kind of keep a control over things, right? But I'm curious, like, in your work, like how much you're faced with that, with having to defend it, or like are you concerned with not even being able to be represented in that space, like because of new state laws and regulations?
guess I have to be careful how to respond, but
Mhm.
I'm not worried about it. I think that people have to be creative to work around the system.
Mhm.
It's just like anything else. I understand there's consequences, but I encourage people to still do the work. We just got to do it differently.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't call it DI initiatives, but we still have to do the work to further us. And so when it comes to consulting, I just had a client for a consulting call. And one of the things I always ask them is, what is the readiness of your organization to take this on? Because I personally do not have the emotional bandwidth nor mental bandwidth to get people to understand why DI is needed. That's not me.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna send you to someone else or someone other my but I don't have time to explain to you why this is needed. I've been in that battle for a long time, and I've learned like some people you just can't teach, but that's not my ministry. My ministry is when you're ready to do the work, let's come together, because I do like working with people in the very beginning of their programs, very beginning of they're trying to shift things in their organization. They're like, we just don't know what to do. We know we need to do something, but we don't know what to do. And so, I believe we just have to be creative of what it looks like. And maybe we can't call it the terms we've been calling it, but the work is still the work.
Yeah,
and we have to keep this fight up. We can't give up. And it's unfortunate that our politicians are making huge changes to put us back. It's mind blowing.
So let's talk about the worthwhile of diversity training, because I am one of those people who believe that, you can teach something no different than you can teach English or math, but it all depends on whether or not there's buy-in, whether or not the person has the capacity to be able to have a change of heart, or at least a change of mind, to be able to function in the space that you're trying to teach them. Based on your response, I'm assuming you think that we should continue with DEI trainings, and they are needed and necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hands down. I think it's needed. I think maybe what we call it may be different, but it's absolutely needed. You're always going to have someone in the room. I have it often when I'm giving presentations who they just don't get it. And you can tell they don't get it because of the questions that they ask me, but I'm not talking to them. I wasn't brought in for them. I was brought in by the organization. And so I believe it's repetitive, right? This thing about DI, it's not a one-time thing. I like to think about the work that I do as a fire starter to the organizations that I'm in with. That's what I'm asking, like their readiness. What are y'all going to do after I leave? What are the continuing conversations that y'all are going to have related to this? But the work must continue.
Yeah.
I think about how I care about the DI work that I do. Simply put, is I want to get people out of their intellectual brain into their heart. When I was at NRAO,
and in corporate, ain't everybody trying to get in their heart?
No, they're not trying to get in their heart, but that's where the change happens. DI is not just an initiative an organization does; it's your personal. So when I was at NRAO, we had, it's during the midst of the pandemic, everything's shut down. We're trying to have different meetings to bring people together, and one was related to anti-racism. And one of my colleagues were talking like, are these resources in the classroom? Probably. I mean, I could send you a lot of things you could read, but let me tell you, it's as simple as this. I'm raising a black young boy, and I'm raising a black young girl. Raise your children in a way they don't kill mine.
Yeah.
I mean, how much data do I need to give you?
Right.
But no, it's really that simple. And when I said it still gives me chills saying it now, because it was the first time I was like, remove all the BS, remove all the things. Like, that's really what it breaks down to. It's your heart posture. And so with DI work, we can have initiatives, but if your heart doesn't want to change and you keep wanting to have these micro passive aggressive language that you're using, you don't want to bring people in that look different than you, like the system's going to continue to be the same. And so I use my power where I can to suggest people like me to be in the room, or the work that I did with the Human Rights Commission. It's like, it's here in Charlottesville, but I know that it made an impact, even if I couldn't do it in an organization. So I believe like the work must continue. We just have to continue to be relentless with it and continue to touch the hearts of people. But I say all the time, like, yeah, I can give you all the data and all of that's great. I think maybe people need it, but really, like, get out of your head. It's really not that complicated, but we make it complicated, especially as scientists. We want to have all the data. We want to have all the research. All right, we done this for 50 plus years. The data hasn't changed.
Right.
So what are we going to do differently?
Right.
And the power structures have to change. I think about the brilliance that's being missed because we're pushed out of our fields. We're constantly beat down. We're in toxic environments. So imagine the discoveries, imagine the inventions that are not happening because we're not there.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it like that. If you don't want to get too much into Rachel, like think about the technology that's being missed because the brilliance that's needed to be in the room has been pushed out.
Right.
Yeah, that's spot on. Yeah, thank you for that.
Right.
Thank you for that. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we can come back for the next half of this conversation, deep conversation. So yes, don't forget IMHO Talk Show online if you want to send those questions and those comments. But it's Sir Charles' Miss Max, and we are joined by none other than Jessica A. Harris, aka Auntie Jess. And so we'll be right back. IMHO Talk Show. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I to the ISM, H to the ISO Talk Show. Mm-hmm. In other words, hashtag IMHO Talk Show. When you want to find us online, you want to chime into this conversation, if you want to run it back, all those good things readily available. And thank y'all for staying tuned, sticking with us, because you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Mm-hmm. And I think that you see why, because we are joined by Jessica A. Harris, astrophysicist, science communicator, consultant, or most of all, Auntie Jess. Yeah. So when we went to break, we left off the conversation, talking about DEI, the need thereof, and the training thereof. And so to follow up on that, and I think Max was alluding to it as well, Jessica, is that like I have the perspective to where I feel like that if there's elements to a space, right? Like whether it's classroom or whether it's office, whatever the case is, to where you have a diverse staff, or there's diversity. There's elements I believe like that can be taught and trained and improved upon. But I would hope that we more so weed out or hire those who actually has the heart for it, because like it's just hard for me to believe that someone who doesn't have the heart, as I heard y'all mention that term a few minutes ago, it's hard for me to believe that they can be taught anything else. You know what I mean? Like I feel like your heart is your heart. I can pretend to keep my job, but I feel like it should even be a prerequisite that I have a level of cultural understanding and sensitivity. Like, what's your thoughts about that?
I mean, if you could implement that, we'd be millionaires. Especially in our field, they don't care about the heart. They care about them papers. They care about the publishing. And there's shifts, right? Where there's talks in our community, don't just give people the money, tie their diversity efforts to the money, right? It always goes back to money. And so Max, to your question about what do you do with the people that don't care? Talk to them about the money.
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers, and every industry will be different, but you're missing out on money. So one of the great examples I love to give is, I don't remember what car company it was, but when they were doing test dummies, they kept doing it with a certain, like a build of a white male. And there was a woman, just a woman. I don't know her ethnicity, but she said, this isn't accounting for women who are pregnant. The way that belt is going across your belly, you and I, we have had kids. I remember that being pregnant, that belt doesn't hit right. And so just that perspective of having a woman in the room, because a man may not think of, oh, I'm pregnant, what to do? Like, just that shift and change. And so there's so many things missed out. I wish we could do things based on the heart of it. Man, that's a powerful statement. We were just saying on break that DEI efforts are most effective when they're from the top down. So shout outs to the director of NRAO, Tony Beasley. He has the heart for it. And he's being taught by people he has a good counsel to say, hey, we need to do this thing. And he's supporting of it. So I wish we could do that. And I wish that we had more people pushing that. But the dynamic in physics and astronomy is that most of the people that have power are white male or white female, and they don't see that. They don't, I wouldn't say they don't care, but you have that performative.
And Charles mentioned just hiring people who do, I guess, have the heart for diversity and cultural sensitivity in the workspace. But so Charles also said, like, we want to change the heart of these people. And my thoughts were, are we okay with accepting them faking it at least from 9 to 5?
No, we're not.
Are we? I mean, let's talk about.
But I think
let's think about what we can realistically do.
Yeah.
If I can work with somebody who, at least between the hours that I am working with you, can sincerely be devoted to cultural sensitivity in that time frame, am I okay with that? Can I live with that?
Can you?
There's some implications outside of the workspace, right? But at least for the time frame that we are sharing a cubicle, maybe.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I mean, I think that's what we have.
That's a good question.
I think we already have that, and I think like that's the push, right, for a deeper dive into what DEI represents, right? Because of course, for the history, it's been black and white a lot of times, but now we realize like that there's so much more, post affirmative action, right? That now people realize that needs to go into representation, whether sexuality, ethnicity, whatever the case is, like respecting all those things. And I feel like that's like, so we're sort of in a conundrum, in my opinion, of we still have a control of power that feels like, if I embrace too much DEI, that means I have to relinquish some of my power because all these qualified people going to come up in there.
That's the thing.
It's not to us.
But that's the thing
we
we have to teach a lot in DEI work. So I do this bead activity that shows all the different privileges we have. And no matter how many times I've done this workshop, so it's 7 different categories. You read the statement. If the statement resonates with you, take a bead. And so there's 7 different privileges in 7 or 8 statements on each one, but no one has never walked away with 0 beads, meaning we all have a level of privilege. And so getting to your point of, we have to sometimes teach those in power. You giving me power doesn't take from your power. So let me give you an example. I have an amazing ally here. We work together in RAO. We were on the Human Rights Commission together. When I tell you she's an amazing ally, she puts me in position. She uses her power to post me on her page. If she's in a room and they're looking for someone to talk, she's always suggesting me. Like, that doesn't take away from her power. When we were doing presentations, there was this huge conference, the Inclusive Astronomy 2 conference, which is a really, really big deal for us in our field. It was in Baltimore. She applied to speak. She gave an intro and then she allowed me to do the rest. Because she's like, I'm pretty established in my field, but you're still building your reputation. Like, that doesn't take away from her power. She's the still number 1 author on that thing. But when it came down to presenting, she did the intro and then she handed it to me. That doesn't take anything away from her. But that's the struggle, is people think if I put you in the room, somehow it's taken away from me. And I've had a lot of experiences where my colleagues have stepped over me to get into position, but that's not how I am. But that's a really good question about the 9 to 5 thing. That's why I said it's out of your head into your heart, because people can only fake that 9 to 5 if they're doing it for so long. So it's not really sustainable. And so I believe this work has to really come from the heart. I know I keep saying that, and it's like, well, how do you do that? But part of why I'm in my own business, which is not easy, but it's worth it, is because I want to fully be authentic the way I show up. I don't have to take every contract that comes to me, but I can't be fake with you. I don't work with people that I don't trust. Period. And it's hard to do that in a 9 to 5 when Jane Doe constantly being a Karen to me. But we got to suck it up. And, them white tears, damaging. I don't really care about your white tears. I mean, I do. I care about your feelings, but you've hurt me. Actually, you were racist to me, and I'm just bringing it up, but now your feelings hurt. I don't care about your feelings, but I have a strong level of emotional intelligence. And one of my organizations, like, that very thing was attacked. Like, I'm a very emotionally in tune, but they told me I need to take an emotional intelligence class. You know what? If I have to take an emotional intelligence class, we all need to take an emotional intelligence class. And part of that was because they didn't think that I was seeing the discomfort of my white colleagues. No, I see it, but I don't care because they don't care about my discomfort on a 9 to 5 basis.
I get you. And just to be clear, I'd much rather change the person than just to have the person fake it. But for the sake of conversation, throwing some stuff out.
And I guess my point is like people can change, of course. I'm not I don't mean to sound so hardline about it. But at the same time, like, I feel like that should be part of employee evaluation of like, are you meeting these marks, or are you still getting complaints about, about your insensitivities, so to speak? You know what I mean?
And some people that is, like some organizations, especially faculty roles, you have to submit a diversity, equity, inclusion statement. at some of my organizations, like that has been part of your performance, a yearly performance. Like, what are you doing to bring to? So again, but it goes back to the top down. If I'm just an employee and I'm not seeing that, it's really hard to make change. But the top down is saying, this is something. That's why shout out to Tony Beasley, because he cared for it being from the top down. He doesn't want it just to be performative, but he only has so much power. But the power that he has, he'll yield it. And all that we're talking about, I want to go back to why I almost left the field, because this weightiness is heavy. You can only change so much.
Yeah.
You can only change so much. So that's why I specifically focus on, like, I want to do mental health. I want to support students, and I want to work with organizations that want to do the change. Because if I think about all of this and changing hearts and peoples and organizations, like, of course I want to do that, but it's too much work.
Yeah.
And I have to just focus in on, like, my lane, but it's a lot, and it can feel really depressing. And one of the things that used to burden me so much was when others are not making the change, people are suffering.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
We're suffering out here.
Yeah.
Like, I think about, I love science, but I was willing to walk away from it. I love it. I love talking about science. I get excited to talking about JWST. Like, I could talk about it for a very long periods of time, but I think about students that, like, I mentor students at Stanford, and they're like 10th, 11th grade, and they're getting burnt out being at PWI, so primarily white institutions. And I'm like, this is crazy. We can't even enjoy the very thing we came here to do because we're experiencing racism. We're experiencing sexism. We're experiencing people constantly questioning our capabilities scientifically. And then you wonder why we leave. And I've had, white colleagues say, well, maybe they just didn't have enough devotion. Maybe they just didn't want to put enough work in. No. I guarantee you that's not it. And so I was able to present internationally. My first international speaking engagement was last year in Prague. And I did this visual. It was the first time doing it, where I was like asking people to give me something of yours, like whatever it may be, trying to indicate that, like, I'm carrying someone's coat, I'm carrying someone's book bag. Someone actually gave me their passport, so it wasn't heavy, but something personal. Like, I'm carrying all these things, and you're still expecting me to be at the same rate that you are.
Right.
It's not fair.
Not at all.
But when you talk about I'm not dedicated enough, well, you know what? You're not experiencing this thing every single day, every time that you show up in the office. And the thing is, Maxine, and I know, Charles, you can relate. We're not just experiencing it in our 9 to 5.
Yeah.
We're experiencing when we're going to the grocery store. We're experiencing it traveling. It's always, I don't get it as much now. Maybe because I have something that tells them not to do it. But I used to, for a long time when I was traveling, it was a certain type of person, it was always female mostly. Anytime I was talking to them, would always say, you're so articulate.
Know what that means.
We know what that means. Because the opposite is that she thought I wasn't so articulate. So that again, the burden, it's not that I'm not passionate enough for it. And that's what I'm saying. We're missing out on technological advances or pushings in our field because we don't want to be in a toxic, no one wants to be in a toxic workplace environment. Right. So there's this famous quote, I'm gonna mess it up, but essentially says, when a flower doesn't bloom, you don't blame the soil, or you don't blame the flower, you blame the soil.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about. The soil is corrupt, but you still asking me as a flower to change.
Right.
Say so.
I'm in the soil though. That's not conducive for me to.
Yes, indeed.
Try not to go in.
Something else that I wanted. We're running short on time. Something else that I was hoping.
Switch gears? Or I had a DI question. Though.
Oh no, I was. So go ahead.
Yeah. So just real quick, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. I also see a conflict between, and not as necessarily new, but since this is our generation that we're in, we're dealing with it, and we read things in history about the conflict between even, let's narrow down to Black people, right? So the DEI within between Black men and Black women.
Yeah.
That's big. That's big. And I want your general thoughts on it about like ways we could deal with that. Because the main thing that I see is, and again, like a lot of times groups, that fight for equality, regardless of what label is on that group, a lot of times they sometimes overcorrect for the simple fact of, if you've been oppressed or been ignored for so long, then like at some point you're like, I'm gonna kick in this door. And then sometimes that hurts our trust because we like, well, what took you so long to come help? You know what I mean? And I'm seeing that amongst even Black men and Black women, to where it's almost like we put each other against each other. And I mean, really, we can go back to even the foundation of this country, right? we can go back to how we were purposely meant to dislike each other, and you know what I mean, like to be degraded in front of each other. So I mean, like, so we could say that it's generational trauma.
It is.
But I'm curious your thoughts on.
And like, we don't have enough time to unpack my thoughts on that. Like, whew, that's a whole another topic for another day. But I would say my general thoughts is true, right? When we're talking about D&I, a lot of times talking about white to black or white to other ethnicities. But I don't think you're correct. We don't talk enough about black to black. Like, there's some that I have met many a times in my career. You would say they've had to assimilate, meaning they've had to buy into the white toxic culture, and they're us. You're like, well, how can you do that? Well, because it's benefiting you to be like that. And I've had personal statements said to me that I may not get it because I'm light skinned, because color isn't part of it. Like, oh, they see you more white to them. That's why you're able to be in those rooms than a dark skinned person. And I'm not negating my dark skinned brothers and sisters' experiences. And what I just try to add to the conversation, because it's not taking away from their experience. What I'm adding is I'm still experiencing the same thing you're experiencing, sis and brother. So what are we talking about really though? Because I'm really not getting in the favoritism that you think that I'm getting just based on my color, because that's actually not happening. So yes, I'm biracial. I'm white, actually white German and black, but I actually stopped saying I was biracial, not because I don't want to identify with my culture where I'm from, because I'm experiencing and living in the world as a black woman. When people see me, regardless of how light my melanin is, my skin, they're still seeing a black woman. They're not seeing my whiteness, maybe, but they're not seeing that when I'm the only one in the room. But you were about to say something.
Yeah. So you love science. You're an astrophysicist, but you've also mentioned God several times throughout this conversation. And I wondered how all of that balances when we're dealing with what science says or proves, and then a divine being, and what role that played in creating anything, if at all, and just having to traverse that throughout your.
We definitely do. So the one thing I say about our field is, like, when you're a Christian in the field, it's like hush hush. Like when you find out someone else is a Christian, you're like, oh man, that's amazing. But we don't talk about it because our field is predominantly like agnostic or atheist in some way. But something I love to say about it is this is how I personally feel. God hadn't personally told me this, but I think he's a humorous God, and this is just my own sanctified imagination about him. I feel he's created all of these things, and as scientists, we're trying to understand it. And to him, it's like comical, but not because he doesn't want us to figure it out, but it's like, I'm gonna give you divine ideas. Like, so any groundbreaking push in our field, like the Einsteins of our world, all the things, right? I believe they were God inspired. I don't care what no one else is saying, because they mention it some way or the other about a divine being. And to me, it's all connected. The wonders of the universe. When you think about, I'm trying not to go in too hard in praise. When you think about the earth where we are, we're just in enough position to not be too close to the sun so we burn up, but not too far away so we're too cold. Like, we're in this perfect dynamic with the moon and the like of all the places in the world. And so we're discovering with James Webb and Hubble and all these other observatories, there's so many other planets and solar systems, but why is it we on this earth were chosen? So yeah, I have lots of thoughts on it, but the general of it is, to me, my faith has never discouraged me from the science of it. It actually encourages, it's like putting language to something divine that God created. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So that's how I tap into it.
Is that a growing thought amongst people in your industry?
I think it's a mixture.
Because I hear that it is, but I don't know if it really is.
I think it's like that hush hush, like I said. You know, people are not as vocal about their Christianity or faith, but I think everyone has their own perspective.
Okay.
Good stuff. Jessica, we're gonna have you back.
I know. Like,
let's go. It's so many things.
We are up against it. And we knew this was gonna happen too. So, so I guess I should have allotted more time. Okay. But maybe it's an excuse to have you back. So,
I would love to be back. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. But but as we go, just final word on how folks can reach out to you, learn more about your work, or if they want to, utilize your services.
Yes. So you can reach out to me at jessicaaharris.com, on social media, Instagram and Twitter. You can follow me at Love Auntie Jess, LOVEAUNTIE AUNTIEJESS, and on Facebook it's Auntie Jess Love. So follow me or go to my website. All that information is there. JessicaAHarris.com.
All right, love it. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
All right. You good, Max?
I'm good.
All right, be blessed, family.
Take care.